We're ready. David, it's been a long time.
It's been a couple of years. I think last
Yeah.
time we talked, I was in my basement surrounded by pillows so you could hear me because it might have been
Oh.
during lockdown or something.
Well, my radio room at home is my old music studio, quote unquote, in the basement. And I have this big rack of overcoats. I don't know
Mhm.
why I have tons of overcoats for over the years. And I wheel that in, like the garment industry. I wheel that in behind me, and that makes for great sound. So it's all about the overcoats that makes the sound. So why don't you just start? I'm sure everyone knows who you are, but just give me the 30-second bio. So
Oh, okay. My name is David Lebovitz. My newsletter is David Lebovitz at substack.com. And I was a professional baker in the San Francisco Bay Area for many, many years. I worked at Chez Panisse for 13 years in the pastry department. And then I moved to Paris almost 25 years ago, which makes me which makes this the longest time I've ever spent in one place. So I'm now a French person as well as an American person. I'm French American, and I have two books out this year, and we can talk about those later. But that's
so
my
which
uh,
part do you like best? The French David Lebovitz or the American David
it
Lebovitz?
depends. It depends where I am. As you know, like you wear many hats. You are a cook. You're a magazine. You're an author. You're an editor, and everything. So it depends what I'm in. If I'm in a professional situation, especially in France, I tell people I am a pastry chef or was a pastry chef. Um, but sometimes I'm in a situation with influencers and I'm getting more comfortable with that word. Still not entirely comfortable, but I sort of have to embrace it, I guess. So when I'm with them, I tell people I have a newsletter and I'm on social media and so forth. But basically, I'm a baker and
So
French American. So
I never asked you, but why did you move to Paris? Was this you moved for love? You moved because you got sick of the States? You moved because you wanted to be in Paris? What was the reason?
yes, no.
All of those things. Okay. Nice
um,
summary.
it's funny because I mean, backing up. Well, I was at a point in my life. I'd been a pastry chef and a professional baker for many years. I was getting older. I'd left Chez Panisse 'cause I'd been there. My time was up because it had run its course. So it's just time for a change, and I didn't know what to do. Um, and I wasn't a Francophile. I wasn't one of these people that always dreamed about moving to France. I'd gone to pastry school here, but I didn't really speak French. I didn't know anything about France. So I just sold everything and put everything in two suitcases when the luggage allowance allowed two suitcases. That's how long ago it
Hmm.
was. And I came here and I think about that. I get asked that question a lot. And part of it is because I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's very much like France. The weather's similar, the food is similar, the wine culture is similar.
Hmm.
And we at Chez Panisse, we had done a lot of French meals, country French cooking, and so forth. So it seemed like sort of a horizontal move for me. Plus, there are 1,300 bakeries here, and I couldn't resist in Paris. So,
So what was it like? So you worked at the cafe, at least at the beginning, upstairs, and didn't you? I think you said you applied originally and got rejected, but then they opened the cafe and you joined there. So what was it like? I've eaten there a few times, and I have to say the pastry, the desserts are, how do I put this? Simple but awesome because
mhm.
you taste the flavor of whatever is in the galette or whatever. But Alice once told me that Bill Clinton. Hold on one second, Jeff. Could you get the door, please?
Is it
Hard.
Bill Clinton's joining us?
Yeah, but Bill Clinton ate there, and I think what she wanted to serve him was the perfect peach.
Yes, I was there
And
that night.
that was her big thing, and I think he went for the blackberry ice cream or something. But you want to just explain the perfect peach as the perfect dessert?
Well, she was flipping out because and in a good way. I don't want to say anything bad about Alice because I love her to pieces. But Alice's idea of the perfect dessert is a perfect peach. She loves
Yeah.
perfect food and doing as little to it as possible. And over the course of my professional life, a lot of people want me to teach classes and do techniques. And I'm like, well, we never actually learned a lot of techniques, which is why I ended up going to pastry school in France later in my career, because I hadn't learned how to do all these
Mm.
official French desserts. And I thought I needed to learn them. And I did. It was good. But everything at Chez Panisse is about the ingredients. So when you
Right.
have a fig tart, it's not just, oh, here's a fig tart. It's like, well, these figs are from, this tree that the neighbors have, and this butter is organic butter that these people started a regenerative agriculture farm, and they're doing butter. So everything has a long tail. So it might seem like, David Chang made fun of Chez Panisse once because he said, oh, it's a plate of figs for dessert. And he later apologized, of course. But um, that's Chez Panisse. And even today, I'm so picky about my fruit and every ingredient that comes into my kitchen, which is here. And
Well, I had to say, I interviewed Alice a few years ago. I went to Chez Panisse, and I hadn't been there in a while. And on one hand, I walked in and felt like, okay, I'm going to get the edible schoolyard story, and everything's perfect, and she lives in La La Land. But I got to say, the food, because I ate there for dinner that night, the food is spectacular in a way that no other restaurant is, which is, as you said, it's all about the ingredients. And she doesn't, there's not too much sugar in the galettes or the tarts. It was just extraordinary. So, lots of other chefs have done things and then, moved to Mexico or whatever.
right.
But she still does that. And I think she gets huge credit for 50 years or more of doing what she set out to do and keeps doing it well. And that's a rare thing in the food world, right? You're
Well,
at Disney World or you're in Las Vegas or whatever, but she sticks to her core
people have
principles.
said, oh, she's a dreamer, and so forth. I'm like, yep, that's who she is.
Yeah,
And she was very fortunate. They bought the building where the restaurant is. She built this restaurant that's not about like making money or opening up
right.
a satellite in Las Vegas. She's very true to her vision. And that's how she eats and she believes and lives. And and she acknowledges that not everybody can do that, but she would like everybody to do that. So, it's one of those things that we struggle with, I think, especially in the United States. How do we get people good, fresh, local ingredients and pay the people who produce them,
Right.
enough? But, we need people like that. And we're seeing a lot of stuff going on in the food world this week. Um, and it's nice to think about Alice actually nurturing children and thinking about, creating a place where employees we got vacations and everything in those days. And for a while we were working during our vacations to make extra money. And then she said, no, the idea of a vacation is to go away. So, or
And
go on.
to vacate, you need to vacate. Yeah, I just interviewed recently two guys who wrote a book about, mega agriculture, and their point was, why don't we try to fix, corporate agriculture because that's easier than doing what Alice wants us to do, the idea of small local farms. And my objection, I think they had a point, but my objection was if there's room to be passionate about food and there's room to be passionate about agriculture and small farms and family farms. And if you take that out of the equation, you just want to make cornflakes healthier or whatever they're talking
Yeah.
about. I think you kind of missed the point, which is that I don't want to sound like a 60s guy, even though I grew up in the 60s. I mean, there's a spirituality
Mhm.
and a romance and to food and a communal sense, which I think is very Alice too, right? So I don't really buy this whole thing about let's just make processed foods better. Yeah, that's fine, but you also have to believe in the opposite of the spectrum, which is let's try for the perfect peach once in a while as well,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you have to live with both of those ideas in your head at the same time, I guess.
Well, there's been a lot of turmoil in France in the last couple of years because um, they want to start using, it's a lot of it has to do with pesticides, and a lot of the big farmers, the agricultural companies, want to keep using them, and a lot of people don't want them on their fruits and vegetables. Um, so, um, But on the other hand, too, everyone's like, everything's too expensive. We need to keep
Right.
prices down. So a lot of produce gets shipped to Europe from other countries where labor's cheaper and the things aren't necessarily organic.
Right.
Uh, and small producer produce costs a little more not everybody can afford it. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword again here
Yeah.
as well. How do we, make food affordable and not loaded down with pesticides. But it was funny because I went to a store this morning and I bought these cookies. They're lady
Mhm.
fingers, and there were only four ingredients in them. There's eggs, sugar, flour, three ingredients, actually. They said they may contain traces of soy and mustard. It's like mustard?
Mustard? They do
But
mustard and then switch the line to ladyfingers.
I mean,
Well,
that
yeah, in the
is,
United States, there'd be more than 4 or 3 ingredients, I would assume, yeah. So, let's talk about the French. We've talked about this before, but a lot of people I know talk about how difficult the French are and, it's always hard, and I've never found that to be true. I've always had a good experience in Paris in particular, and you and I have talked about and you give people advice, like, you walk into a store or a restaurant, you make eye contact, you say hello, you have an interaction with a person that even someone in a shop who's just working for an hourly wage, you treat them like they own the store
mhm.
and give them respect. So, do you wanna just give us some advice in what you found over your 20 years or whatever in Paris? What how to deal with the French and what makes the best, vacation, for example?
I hear people tell me this a lot, people who don't live here, and they're like, "David, you just need to say bonjour, madame, or monsieur when you go into a store." I'm like, "I know that." Um, and that is important, but it's also important if you're going into like a chocolate shop. Um, don't just start taking pictures. Spend a minute appreciating everything because people spend a lot of time, putting out the displays and bakeries and so forth. So show appreciation for things and then purchase. Um, so that's part of it. I also tell people go to the same places over and over
Right,
again,
right.
even if you're coming for a week. Go to the same cheese shop because the next day they will remember you and they'll be like, "Oh." And Paris actually does reward, I guess, fidelity. Patricia Wells once told me that when nobody moves in Paris because of the bizutage, which means hazing. So you have to get to know everybody. Um, when I moved to my current neighborhood, I went to the market and the guys were like yelling at me to buy stuff. Monsieur, monsieur, achetez, achetez. And I'm like, look, I know what I want. And now they see me and they're like, bonjour, and they're nice. But, they saw me as sort of an American or somebody new in the neighborhood and they wanted to reel me in. And now I'm like their pal. So go to the same place over and over. And the third thing I should say, and this is probably not good to say, but a lot of people are getting restaurant recommendations off social media. And there are some good places, but a lot of people, especially people who don't live here, are kind of recommending places that are um, I guess influencer friendly, shall we
Mhm.
say, and even bakeries. And some of those places are good, some of them aren't. And I don't want to call out anybody in particular, but just because somebody is tearing apart a croissant in the middle of, you know, the street doesn't make it a good croissant. They're a really good croissant. I just had visitors here and I took them to Terroir d'Avenir Bakery, which you don't see on social media. And she was like, that's the best croissant I ever had. And she's a TV food producer. So, mhm.
Well, last time I was in Paris last September, it was, by the way, 48 and raining the entire time I was there, but anyway,
Hey,
um, I did try I went to a bunch of places for a croissant. I have to say, there were a couple places that were good,
mhm,
but, some of them reminded me of the McDonald's croissant. I mean, they were just soft, they weren't crackly on the outside, and, they didn't shatter when you tore into them or bit into them. So I guess they're still croissant, but what about, like, the baguette? I've had a hard time with that, and you don't get that, very flat that airy interior, right? that's just
Mhm.
so wonderful, and that really crackly crust. Are baguettes and croissants starting to get better? Have they hit the bottom at this point and coming back, or what?
I would say croissant are getting bigger. You see, like in America, these giant
Right.
croissants. And, I'm starting to see that now, and a lot of bakeries in Paris, especially that are opening, are inflating their pastries, to be more Insta-friendly and so forth. And some friends of mine opened a bakery, and they called me up, and they're like, "People are complaining the croissants are cooked in the middle." I said, "Well, they're too big, and
Mm,
nobody wants, like, a giant croissant. You want one that's I want more crust than
right.
interior, so, I like the small ones." I think, those things are you can still find good examples of them, but on the other hand, bakers change. The same bakery, there's somebody who makes the baguettes one day, and they take them out, and they're dark, and nice and crackly, and then the next day, they could be different.
Mm.
So consistency is always an issue. And things change too as well. People always like, who has the best baguette? I'm like, well, it's hard to say. A new bakery just opened yesterday down the street from me, and I'm kind of interested in it because their tagline is a French bakery with an American touch.
Oh,
No, stop. Okay, stop.
that
Look,
doesn't
no. Well, it's all French pastries.
uh,
And I didn't see. I mean, Americans are really good bakers and make good French pastries. But nothing's like Americanized. It's all really good looking. So I didn't stop in because it was raining, and of course my umbrella was broken. Broke as soon as I like got to the market. So
well, there's that bakery I went to years ago in the Belleville area. I've forgotten the name of it, but, they don't open early in the morning.
okay,
They make a lot of sort of Australian and American. They do cookies and they do all the other stuff, and so I
the
just going like, "Oh, well, so if you show up at 6:30 for your baguette, no, they open at 8 or 9 or something." So I guess it was sort of a I don't know if there was an up yours to
well,
the French, or it was just like, "This is what we wanna do." So I
well,
don't
that
know.
was Chad at Tartine in San
Yeah.
Francisco. He was like, I don't want to wake up early. And so they started, bread was for sale starting at 4 o'clock on. That bakery you were talking about is Le Petit Grain.
Yeah,
And
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
yeah, and they had this really good peanut tart with
Oh, yeah,
marshmallow.
no, no, we made that here at Milk Street. It has the, the, uh, the meringue, sort of foamy meringue on top, and
Did you like
that's a
it?
oh, I love that tart.
Okay, because
Yeah.
just a couple minutes ago when I mentioned an Anglo touch to French pastries, you made a face. So
Well, no, I just thought as a marketing concept, that's not a great marketing concept in Paris. It's not that I mean, that they had and they have the Australian pastries and stuff. It was really good. So you did a bit of a year in Provence thing in a book, years ago, and you talked about getting your apartment and all that stuff, and there were just some great stories. You wanna just talk a little bit about that because it was sort of like Catch-22 or, with the absurdity of some of this was insane, right?
well, before I bought my last apartment, I had a full head of hair. I didn't have any wrinkles. Then I had a 3-month renovation that took, over 2 years and
Yeah.
involved lawyers and so forth that I wasn't prepared for, and, I wanna say it was a comedy of errors, but it wasn't funny at the time. But after everything happened, it was like everything that was terrible that could happen to me happened during those 2 years, um, from violence to, me, holding somebody against the wall, ready to punch them. And I'm a pretty nice person generally.
Was this a contractor you were dealing
Yes.
with?
Yes,
Oh,
I was it was just enraging. But years later, I was walking down the street, the sidewalk in New York. I said, "You know what? This is a book." And so I decided to write about the story about buying an apartment in Paris. Because a lot of people dream about buying an apartment in Paris and they're like, oh my God, that must be so great. And it can be. I would love to buy a food magazine and do cooking like you do. You're like, so it's not for everybody and things can go wrong. Sometimes things go right. But everything that could go wrong did.
So
It was
renovating a place in New York versus Paris, what's the difference? What are the things that are unique to Paris in terms of difficulty?
when I had an apartment in New York, I renovated the bathroom and I wasn't there. And the contractor every few days sent me pictures. What do you think about the height of this mirror? And he was like really nice. He was done on time. I was like, oh, wow. And
But that did not happen in Paris.
yeah. However, we had somebody come last week who was wonderful here. I'm doing some stuff in the apartment. He was really professional. What was interesting, I don't know if we should talk about this. He said he built a love apartment. It's like in Japan where they have those love hotels
Right.
where people
Love
go.
hotels. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, me and my sons built this apartment and designed it. We rent it out. He goes, and we're doing really well. We've paid off the mortgage. It's like, maybe I should have done that. Build like a love apartment in
Well,
Paris.
isn't there a love hotel near Place Pigalle?
Oh,
Someone told me that, I think my wife actually told me for some strange reason, Melissa, that there you could stay there as a regular person, but they also rented rooms by the hour. So I guess I don't know.
I would stay in one in Japan. I wouldn't stay in one in Paris.
No.
But anyway, so I did learn a lot. I was going to leave France because I was so upset. A lot had happened to me, but it made me sort of realize like, I'm actually like, there's nothing more Parisian than having a renovation go wrong. That's why everybody seems to be in a bad mood in France. A lot of it is all the paperwork and the bureaucracy, but it's also most people have had a bad experience with contractors. And when I did talk to a lawyer about, um, you know, when everything went wrong, he said, well, you'll probably lose because people don't like property owners. And then he thought about it. He goes, but actually, people don't like contractors more. So you might win.
So I guess you also told me if you go into the bureaucracy with a driver's license or a checking account or anything, the objective of the other person across the counter from you is not to get something done. It's to sort of disappear into the bureaucracy itself is the point. It's not getting from A to B, right?
Yes. It was funny because my bank, they sent me one of those online surveys. And nobody likes their bank in France. It's not like America where you go in and they offer you coffee and, you tell jokes, you call them up and they're like, oh, how you doing, David? Um, so I answered it honestly and they called me. It's like an hour later. I was like, oh my God. And they wanted to talk about it. But one thing I did learn after I became French is when you're part of the public service system, they have to, first of all, they have to help you. When you're not, you're a stranger, you're a visitor to France. And I had a lot of trouble with my visa over the years, getting a visa. Um, and a French friend said, well, I said, it was much easier getting my passport. And she goes, well, think about it. You were a stranger and people
Mm.
don't really like strangers. They want people who have, adhere to French values, that have absorbed French culture and became French. So I was like, oh, okay, well, now I'm accepted here. And just last week, I got my ID card renewed and I made a mistake on the form. And the guy at the desk, I made a mistake. I didn't realize there's two different words for city. They asked me what commune I live in. And I was like, commune? And he's like, that's your city. So he fixed it. He goes, I'll fix it. And I said, oh, thank you. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, that's what I'm here for.
What?
I know.
That's shocking. I'm
And then
here to help you. That
he was
you
really nice. So you do get those people who are very nice and helpful. A French friend of mine once asked me something. It was kind of funny that he asked me this is years ago. He goes, how come the customer service is so bad in France? But then when you go to like a 3-star restaurant, the customer service is really good. I said,
That's a
well,
good question.
you're the French person. You can answer that. But French service, France is actually, they do high low very well. So like, you go to the
Right.
Hermes and you're going to get stellar service. Um, but sometimes, you go into like a department or not, just a store. And if they're in like they might not be in a great mood, but the secret is once again, it's fidelity. When I bought my bicycle, they were super nice to me because I'd been in the store before. They gave me free baskets. I was like, wow. So I got free bike baskets.
It took you 20 years to earn it, though, right? I mean,
Yeah. But I also learned that my partner's friend, she's like, ask for everything.
right.
And that actually, I wanted to have some copper pans retinned and I asked for a quote and this copper company gave it to me. I said, "Do you think they'd give me a professional discount?" So I said, "Well, can you give me a discount?" And so they said, "Oh, we'll do it for free." So, okay.
Glad you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of service, the last time I was there, I think you told me about Le Severo initially years
Mhm.
ago, but it's essentially a steak place, tiny, uh, and we went in, and it's just classic, like the same guys there that was there last time I went, and they had a lot of their friends were eating there, so that the guy kind of runs the place is sitting down with them, and I had two people with me, and I said the key thing is you can't not finish everything on your plate. Because I was there years ago with one of my kids, and she ordered the one of the most expensive steaks and ate half of it.
Uh-huh.
And so the waiter came over with a complete look. I mean, just like wanted to kill her, and gave it to the chef who's right there. And he
Uh-huh.
looks at this and looks at her and just dumps the dumps the steak into the garbage and just swore.
Oh,
So
no.
so we got there, and it's just you never find a place like this in the States. It's like a family place, and it's just great. Anyway, so we had a dessert. It was actually, I think it was a fig tart of some kind. Anyway, and someone had only eaten half of it, and I said, "No, you no, I will eat the other half because I don't want the guy coming
Well,
back and asking
now
me."
one of the good things about COVID is places started to get much more friendly about
Mm,
giving you food to take home. And also, there's much more consciousness about food waste. And it is wasteful to leave. It's hard, in America, the portions are huge and they love it. I've actually read things that say, like, as soon as you order your food in America, like, ask them to cut it in half and put half in a box so you don't eat it if you're on a
hmm.
diet. Like, but yeah, don't waste food. I'd I wouldn't like that was kind of mean for him to do that to your daughter. He should have said, "Can I give it to you to snack on later?"
No, he was just
Wasn't
disgusted.
having it.
He was just totally disgusted. I mean, the one of the things that's nice, though, I love about French restaurants is they give you space. They're not hovering, and
Yeah.
they don't ask, "How's it going so far?" or "How is the first bite?"
Mhm.
Which is just, I just don't understand. I mean, I know people are trying to be friendly, but,
Also,
eh,
French people are
you know
really into people expressing their opinions. So, like,
mm,
if you don't like something and you say, like, "Well, this wasn't really what I thought it was gonna be," and they're like, "Ah bon?" And they won't like and I do that in America, and they're like they start crying. I'm like, "No, no, it's fine." I mean, I'm okay, it was fine,
I'll
but if
survive, right.
well, they'll say, "Ah bon?" And, and sometimes they'll say, "Well, that's how the chef likes it." Or, you can say, for like a wine, I've been seeing these sommeliers on the internet and social media talking about ordering wine in restaurants. And they say, they're giving you a taste of wine, not to see if you like it, but to see if the wine's any good because you've ordered it.
Huh,
And I went out twice
that's interesting.
and the two times I didn't like the wine. Um, and they were like, "Oh, we'll get you something else." And I was like, "Well, I ordered it." They're like, "No, no, no. We can
Really?
sell it in glass." And they were super nice about it.
Well, I do like, Le Baratin is another place I like,
Oh, you do?
and, and the chef is the wife, and the husband is the front of house. And it's just like Faulty it used to be like Faulty Towers, like, he just didn't like people. Like, he was
Uh-huh.
brutal. He was
Yeah.
just absolutely brutal, which I really loved,
Oh,
and his wife was a terrific cook, and really charming. But we went back last fall, and we were standing out in the rain because it hadn't. Our reservation was we were there a little bit early, and I figured like this guy was going to be pissed off if I showed up early. He actually invited us inside. He was charming. So I don't
Mm,
know whether he had a late life crisis or his wife sat down with him or something, but it went from John Cleese and Faulty Towers
okay.
to being actually kind of a nice guy, and so I kind of like that. I like the fact that people in restaurants take their profession seriously. They take themselves seriously. You have to you have to treat them well. They're not low level people,
No. Well,
and that's very French, and I love that about France. Yeah.
one of the best things I think that's happened in France in the last several years, or at least in Paris, are young people who work in restaurants. They're much more engaged.
Mm,
They're knowledgeable. They're happy you're there. They want to take care of you. Not in an obsequious way at all, but they're not gonna yell at you or scowl if you don't eat your meat or something. And that's been really great because it makes going out so pleasurable. Um, and these young people also, they have really, they're really knowledgeable about wine, especially as, more and more wines are, natural wines are, sort of the default now in a lot of restaurant wine lists. And they had kind of a bad reputation before. So people are skittish. And it's great that, like I said, the last two wines, they were like, oh, if you want to change it, go ahead. Um, and
we
so
should
it's,
never
yeah,
hear. Yeah, I'm sorry. You opened it. You bought it. You've written about vin jaune, the yellow wine. What is
yes.
yellow wine?
It's wine. Well, in the Jura region of France, they produce wine, and it's called sous voile, which means it's barrel aged. But rather than topping off the barrels with more wine as it evaporates, they let a veil of yeast, a fleur, it's called, form on the surface, and it gives the wine sort of a nutty sherry like taste.
Hmm,
And a lot of Americans or people who don't know, and this is not a criticism, it's just uh, they say, oh, this wine is bad or it's oxidized. It's kind of like sherry. But no, that's how it's supposed to be. And the wines are really good. And Vin Jaune is a wine that's aged at least 6 years.
hmm.
They refuse to put it. It comes in these bottles that are called clavins. I think they're 52 centiliters, whereas a traditional bottle of wine is 70. And the difference is meant to show how much
The
wine
evaporation.
it's. Um, and so they've just started exporting it to the US because it wasn't allowed to. And it still is kind of an outlier. It's almost a dessert wine.
Hmm.
It's not sweet. But if you've ever had Comté cheese, um, it's made in the same region and it's an unbelievable combination, the two together. So I made a cocktail with it in my newsletter recently and it was absolutely delicious. And I like that oxidized taste in wine now. So
So last time I was there, Comte is sort of like the cheese everyone was talking about. So is that did Comte just come out of nowhere and all of a sudden become hugely popular or what?
I think I could be wrong. It's the second most popular cheese in France, or could be the third. Um, but it's really good. It's just a really great cheese. I wish I worked for them because I'm good at promoting it. But like last night, we had a young Comté, and a lot of people come to France or in France, and they're like, "Oh, I like old cheese. The older, the better." And then when I was there, where they make the cheese, all the people that make it eat the young cheeses
Hmm.
because they say, "Well, we can taste the milk because they use really high quality milk." So it's a great all-purpose cheese, and it's just always popular in France. Maybe you're it is available in America. It's a raw milk cheese, but it's aged after longer than 6 weeks.
6 months.
Yeah, so it's
S So,
6
okay, so let's assume I'm a tourist here. What are some of the dishes you might suggest, like in a bistro or whatever, that, Americans probably have not had and would not recognize on the menu, but they definitely should try,
ooh, that's kind of a tough one, because Paris the food in Paris now has become so globalized.
right?
Mm. It's hard to say because I actually made a little list of some restaurants that I like because often people ask me that. And a restaurant like Les Servants, which has wonderful food. The chef, she's lived in, she might be French, but she has Filipino and Polish background. And she has this amazing warm brioche with chili butter on top
Mm.
and raw sardines. And it's so delicious. And so it's hard to say like what to order in a French restaurant that somebody wouldn't know. One thing Americans often kind of recoil at is œuf mayo, eggs
Mhm.
with
Yeah,
mayonnaise.
I a few years ago, when I was in Paris, we did that. I did that cooking class on œuf mayo, and it was not popular. I did it in the magazine. I
What
loved it, but it just did not. People did not want it. Yeah,
if you call it deconstructed egg salad?
yeah,
Right?
maybe that's better. Yeah,
But that's like, I always order that whenever it's on a menu. I order it, and when I used to lead tours, we'd go to restaurants. I was like, "We're getting œuf mayo," and everyone's like, "What? What?" And then they would eat it and go, "Oh my god, this is so good." Yeah.
yeah. I just think people think, oh, it's eggs and yolks, and it's too fatty or something. So I do have a complaint or a comment about the French and vinaigrettes and mustard.
Mhm.
Like, like leeks with vinaigrette, for example, they use so much mustard, at least when I've had it. It's just like overpowering. It's like I get a little bit of mustard helps with the emulsion, blah, blah, blah. But
Mhm.
even on a, very delicate green salad, you're gonna there's often a little mustard and vinaigrette. So what is it with mustard and vinaigrettes? They're just obsessed with it.
Well, you have to. I mean, every culture, and this is the word that nobody likes to hear. Every culture has its umami. Americans have our ketchup. Japanese people have soy sauce. Mustard is the French umami. So that's something French people crave. That's a flavor that they crave. So they use it very prominently. And I like it a lot in foods. What's interesting is I go to a restaurant that does a pot au feu, like the beef, traditional
Mhm.
boiled beef, and they serve it with this mustard. And I don't know where they get this mustard, but it's so hot. I mean, it burns my sinuses and I love it. But, that's mustard also changes if you cook it. It really, loses its oomph and it changes once you open the jar. It starts getting less and less and less. So, I'm gonna defend the French use of mustard.
Well, just don't put it on a delicate green salad, though. I mean, there there
Well,
are places where, well, I mean, maybe they what did Jacques Pepin used to say? He used a empty mustard jar to make his he just shook it, to
oh, yeah.
make his vinaigrette. Yeah, whatever. Anyway,
Well,
okay.
a guy who has a restaurant near me once said to me, he goes, "What is it with you people from California? You really know how to make salads." I was
Hmm.
like, "Yes, we do," because I make a
Yes.
salad every day, and I made them at Chez Panisse, so I don't like to brag, but I make really good salads.
Well, give me an example. What's one of your favorites? You just make a salad out of whatever you find in the
Yeah,
market, I
vinaigrette, like
assume.
today, it was just lettuce with radishes and a hard-cooked egg, but I have to say I took this out because we were doing this live together. This peppermill I saw you recommend
Oh
once,
yeah, 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 yeah.
this is the best peppermill ever. I looked in your store. You have this amazing store on the Milk Street website, and I saw you don't carry. You're not doing. There are no pepper mills on there.
Well,
But
there we do have a wooden one with that ceramic top now, but
okay,
yeah, that one's is pretty cool. What's the make of that one? I've forgotten.
it's that Swiss company Kuhn Recon,
Cone Recon, yeah, yeah,
and I was
yeah.
funny because reading about it somewhere else, and someone complained that it was too noisy.
That seems like it's not like you're doing it for 5 minutes. Come on,
It's
get
like,
get
do you have a
over it.
vacuum cleaner, like,
Yeah.
or a blender?
So you wrote about this. I read yesterday that the French love to talk, and sometimes the streets are noisy at night and people can't sleep. So is this? You said something about they hired a troupe of clowns to
Oh,
go
that was a long
around. Now what was that? I didn't get that. So what did they do?
I don't know. I mean, I used to live in a neighborhood that was very popular at night, and people don't realize, like, especially in the summer, people are like, "Oh, we're coming to Paris. We're staying in the Marais in August." I'm like, well, you're going to have the window open and there's no air conditioning. And, if there's a cafe down the street, they're going to be,
Right.
one's going to be out there till 2 a.m. Then they're going to close. And then they're going to hang out for another hour or two and, have a cigarette and, talk about, and they're slightly tipsy. So they're extra loud. So it can be very, very loud here. And a friend of mine who was here just the other day, she's a journalist. There's somebody in her building that's always having parties. So she knocked on their door at 12:30 in the morning. And the woman was like, what? And she was like, can you turn the music down? She goes, well, we're almost finished. And she was like really dismissive of her. So we had some neighbors had almost gotten a fist fight in my old neighborhood, and I was watching the whole thing because somebody had a party. So that's sort of one of the things, the partying in Paris. But the clown thing was kind of funny. I think,
And
you know,
just tell the story. What was the clown thing?
well, the city was sending out people like dressed as clowns or something to get people to be quiet, which I guess is kind of, can be funny in a lot of
But
ways.
why? Because clowns don't talk? I mean, I don't I just don't get it.
I don't know. I just saw somebody like complaining about the trash on the streets in Paris, and everyone, somebody was like, the mayor's responsible. I'm like, aren't the people that throw the trash on the street responsible? It's like the mayor can't follow people around and pick up after them. So,
So the French are famously, uh, pessimistic about the future, right? I mean, Americans always, at least until recently, were going like, "Yeah, things are gonna get better and better." The French seem to be like, "No, this is gonna get worse." I mean, things are gonna fall apart. Is that still very French, or have they kind of gotten over that?
well, pessimism is sort of the national
Right,
mood. And as Americans, we often go into a situation expecting the best.
right.
And then we have a meltdown when things go wrong, like the flight gets canceled or something. Whereas French people sometimes go in, with their,
Expecting, yeah.
ready, and then they're wonderful afterwards. My partner had to call Apple because he had a question about his computer, and they were like super nice on the phone. He's Apple, and he was like kind of yelling at them. And I was like, don't do that. They're helping you. You don't have to be that way. But part of it also, French people talk about over each other, so it can lead to the impression that they're aggressive, and disagreeable, and that's one of the things I haven't learned how to cope with yet after 20 something years. But I would say, I mean, people are pessimistic in general. Um, and I don't quite know why, but their history is much. They've been attacked over
A
they've had
few times, yeah,
whereas Americans,
right.
we've always succeeded. Yes, we're going to succeed, and we're also a culture like, how can I make things better? That's why things get invented in America, because
Hmm,
there's a problem and someone says, oh, let's invent a computer you can put in your pocket and carry it around.
right.
And we have that open-mindedness where in France, and also in France, there's a lot of administration. And every time I see like a politician on the street, like on TV, somebody comes up and he goes, there's trop de papier, there's too much paperwork and blah, blah, blah. And that's every dinner party I've been to in France that comes up, paperwork.
Do you get asked as an American, or at least half American, whatever you wanna call yourself, do people ask you questions about politics or other things, your insight into America or what you think about something since you were originally American, does that happen, or you're just one of the gang?
I'm one of the gang, and I've lived here long enough. However, I did meet a woman on the street, an older woman the other day, and I guess we can sort of talk politics a little bit. Um, but she said she was an older French woman. She goes, I really like America, and it's startling to see what's going on there. And we talked, and I said, well, we're actually a very young country, America. Like France has been around a long time. I said, America's like 250 years old. And I said, countries go under. Leaderships change. They have over, all these countries that you read about in the newspaper. So these things that are happening in America have happened in other places as
Right.
well. And I said to her, he's like, maybe America as an experiment that didn't work. Maybe, and she was kind of shocked. I said, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's my soapbox.
Well, that you sound very French. David, that's a very French answer.
Well, to me, it's very open. I consider myself open minded. It's like, well, what's going to happen?
Okay. Well,
So,
nobody knows.
yeah.
Um, Avocado gelato with espresso. I mean,
Okay.
I get the vanilla espresso with, uh, a vanilla gelato with espresso, but you like the avocado version of that? I mean, I guess ice cream is becoming now a thing in Paris.
Yes, and I'm kind of upset because years ago I wanted to open an ice cream shop in Paris, and everyone said, "Don't do it. French people don't eat ice cream in the winter, and it's too hard to do business here." So, and these ice cream shops have opened, and they're doing really well, and I wanted to do it,
You
but
missed it.
I missed it. On the other hand, um, I work on my couch sometimes writing, and I don't have to deal with paperwork and stuff. I love making ice cream. So, but as you know, owning a business, a friend of mine has a restaurant. He said, owning a restaurant's not about food, it's about solving problems. He goes, that's all I do all day is solve problems.
Well, that's running any small business probably, right? I would
Yeah.
define my career as exactly that, as
Yeah.
solving.
Yeah. And I love making ice cream. So, and I love trying new flavors. The whole idea in, I think it's Brazil, they do a drink that's avocado and coffee. And I was like, that's a little, we
Odd.
don't use words like strange or odd anymore, because we want to be respectful of other cultures. So it was just a flavor combination I thought was really intriguing. So I tried it, and once again, as cooks, we're open minded. It's like, is that going to work? And try it, and it's delicious.
Yeah, there was, I forgot what's that restaurant in Venice in California, is
Jelena.
yeah, Jelena, and in his cookbook, which I really like, he had a, ginger ice cream recipe,
Mhm.
but he put crème fraîche in it.
Mhm.
And I gotta tell you that, that completely changed how I make ice cream because crème fraîche, I don't understand why, but you get the smoothest, creamiest, non-crystallized ice cream. It's kind of a magic ingredient. Maybe you understand it better than I do, but every time I make ice cream now, which is just a few times a year, crème fraîche is definitely in there because it's like a magic
Mhm.
addition.
Well, one thing that's interesting in France is crème fraîche is cheaper than liquid cream in the supermarket. So
Hmm,
you can buy like a big tub of crème fraîche for like €1.50, like 2 cups worth.
really?
And I do use it in ice cream because people think crème fraîche is supposed to be tangy and acidic. And actually had a little mini battle with Alice Waters because we were making our own crème fraîche with buttermilk as a starter. And she's like, it's not supposed to be acidic. It's supposed to be nutty. So we started getting
Hmm.
starter from France at Chez Panisse and using it. The one problem with using crème fraîche in ice cream, and this has happened to me, I tried it, um, is if you let it sit in the refrigerator overnight, like the crème fraîche cultures can turn the whole batch of ice cream. It can
Hmm.
sure the whole thing.
Huh.
It can a little tangy, a little
Well,
crème
that's
fraîche.
assuming you have any left over, I guess that's
No, this is before you freeze the ice
Oh,
cream.
oh, oh,
So when you make the ice cream custard and you put crème fraîche in it, then you refrigerate it. And it's kind of like when you add buttermilk to cream
I see.
and you let it sit at room temperature, it
Well,
transforms.
I gave up refrigerate I have an electric, you know, ice cream machine, which I've had for years. I don't bother I put it in the machine, it'll chill it down and then churn it. So I don't
Okay.
let it sit overnight, so I don't know, whatever, but it seems to work really well. So what other so again, let's assume I didn't know you, I called you up, I was annoying, I said, "I'm coming to Paris, talk to me." What
Mhm.
other maybe there's places you like to eat, there's some more advice you have for me. things not to do, things to do. What would be those 3 things you'd wanna tell me?
Can you repeat the
Because
question?
y
I was looking at
what?
the chat. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Because I know that, you've had hundreds of people call you up and say, "I'm coming to Paris."
Mm.
But what would be 2 or 3 pieces of advice or places to eat or whatever?
Once again, I would say go to the same place,
Right.
as much as you can, shop at the same market, and so forth. Um, check out my and I actually have a restaurant list on my website,
Oh, you do? Okay. And what's your website again?
davidlebovitz.com.
Okay.
And I actually update it, and it's places I eat. And same with my newsletter. I have a whole Paris dining. And I do in my monthly newsletter too, list places. And they're places like I eat and I really like. And you might not read about them, um, in the newspaper or online, but they're places I like. So follow me. But I like giving good advice to people. And what's the third thing I would say?
What's the thing you can experience in Paris you can't get in the States, for example? What would be a couple of things you could do? I guess you could order a glass of wine and sit at the table for 2 hours, but that's
To me, going to the market is really special, especially like on Sunday, the market in the Bastille. They have people. It's the biggest market in Paris, and you can go and have fresh oysters and wine.
Mm,
Um, and it's like 15 euros for like half a dozen oysters and a glass of
mm,
wine or cup of wine. There, no glass. It's in a paper cup. It's great.
hmm.
That's something I tell people to do is like go to a market and drink wine too, because wine, we were talking about wines from the Jura. Wine is so cheap in France compared to especially the United States.
Mm.
Great chance to taste all these different wines. A glass of wine in a restaurant could be 7 or 8 euros. So taste something that is maybe different than what you're used to. I mean, that's what I do. Sometimes I'll look, oh, this is a Sylvaner. What is that? And then they'll tell me it's a
Are
wine.
there a couple of wines other than the Vin Jaune you might suggest people try?
Um, wines from the region of Alsace, people have this idea that they're sweet, and that's over. And even nowadays, the bottles on the back, they have like a sweetness gauge to show people that they're not
Mm.
sweet. But people have this thing about wines from Alsace being sweet. They come in these long bottles. So try those. And they're actually really good values. And it's the only region in France where they name the wine for the grape. So they'll say Riesling or Gewürztraminer. Whereas I had a friend from California visiting and we went to a restaurant and there was a Chardonnay on a menu. She goes, I don't like Chardonnay. I said, well, it's Chablis. Do you like Chablis? She said, yeah, I love Chablis. I'm like, well, that's made from Chardonnay grapes. So, yeah. So a lot of people don't know that stuff, which is fine. It's, with the wine world is very complicated. So it's a great chance to taste something new and different and ask people in restaurants. If you go to a restaurant that has like an intriguing wine list, ask them, say, which should I order? There's a restaurant I go to near me called Jones, and they're like, the woman like shut me down right away. She goes, tell me, do you want red or white or orange? How much do you want to spend? And she'll, I'll bring you something. And if you don't like it, we'll change it. I was like,
Really?
all right.
Okay.
So, in America, we're used to controlling the experience. So I want this. Can you do it this way? Can I get the sauce on the side? And in France, often you just kind of let them do what they do.
Well, I assume if if you're at a restaurant and ask them to change the recipe, that doesn't go over very well,
It doesn't, but you wouldn't go to somebody's house and do that.
right?
If you invited me over and I showed up and I said, oh, you made meatloaf. Can I get it without the tomatoes on top? And all that shit. Just, it's a different service idea of service.
Right.
The phrase is they're not, they're there to help you. They're there to serve you, not to be of service. Um,
That's a great line. I like that.
Yeah, and just, treat them like regular people. Once again, you or I am a tourist in this country. Be really respectful. I did that in Japan. I made mistakes, and I bowed to everybody, and excuse me, sorry,
Right.
and just be humble too, and also realize that those people, people say, "Oh, we're coming to," the waiter, we dropped our glasses. That waiter's going to go to New York someday, and they're going to feel out of place too, and so don't feel, don't feel out of place when you come to France. And actually, lastly, I should say, there's this whole thing like French people don't like Americans, and I've actually never people never if people might make like an offhanded remark about Americans, but I've never had any anti-American stuff thrown at me. So,
Well, maybe they don't think Americans are worth getting mad at or something. I guess they're just not on their radar, maybe.
well, like I said, the woman who stopped me on the street, the older woman, she was like, "I love America." She's like, American culture is very interesting. And even, we watch TV here, and they have like little vignettes of life in Texas and stuff. It's,
Right.
interesting. People are eating tacos and fajitas and I was watching it this morning, and they're like, "Oh, how adorable."
Finally, tipping in Paris. So, if you're at a restaurant, how does that work?
Well, the service charge is always added to the bill in France, no matter what anybody tells you. If they say on the menu or anything, tip not included, that's illegal. That said, with these new point of sale machines where they come to your table, at first, there was a tip on there, and they would say, you don't have to leave a tip. This is a new thing, blah, blah, blah. And now, like, they're coming to the table and it says, like, do you want to leave 20%? And especially Americans were like, okay, yeah, well, nobody in France would leave a 20% tip. I'm not a cheap tipper. But the system in France is that the tip is included and anything extra is a show of appreciation.
So you
So
might tip 10% or something, or
10% if you're super happy, 5% if you're happy. You don't have to leave anything. And I know people like a French friend of mine who lives in Brooklyn. She goes, and even my last French teacher is like, I never ever leave a tip. I will never leave a tip.
and
Um,
if you do leave a tip, should you leave it in cash on the table or just put it into their little computer?
I usually, well, it's easier to do it on the machine. I always leave it in cash for my accounting because it's easier. It's a long, twisted French story, how French accounting works, but it's easier for me to leave it on the table. And also, I feel like I'm not over tipping. I mean, a lot of times you're like, oh, I'll just round it up to this, tap the button. And once again, I'm not cheap. I believe, the people who work in restaurants are getting healthcare and vacation time. They're not super well paid, so I do tip, but um, that's the system here. So people shouldn't feel obligated, and it's at your discretion. Once again, 5% or rounding it up is fine. The only person I tip 20% to, and a little bit more, is the woman who I get facials from. Uh,
Well, then there goes your priorities right there.
She does a really good job, and, um, sh I like her a lot, and, she deserves it because I think that, she works in this room all day, and so she gets
Well,
20.
you wouldn't want anything to go wrong with your facial, right? I mean, that would not be a good thing, right? So,
But it's
David,
okay.
it's been a pleasure.
Appreciate
I'm gonna be in Paris in September, so
okay.
I
Look me
will
up.
I will actually look you up. I just feel bad about bothering you because I'm sure you get bothered all the time by Americans coming over, but I'm gonna bother you this time. So,
Yeah, but you're not a bother, and,
well,
actually was on
depends
your
who you ask.
I was on your show once. I remember coming to Boston, and I didn't know it was your wife, and I said, "He's amazing."
What did she say? She said, He's he's just annoying," right?
Well, no, I mean, you were really incredible and your staff was really amazing in the test kitchen and so forth. And I'm getting red now. That's not the ring light. But it was really like a spectacular day, and you recommended a really good restaurant that is now closed, unfortunately. But I was
Yeah.
like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, on a good day, not on a bad day. David,
Okay.
pleasure.
Okay.
Take care. I'll
Thanks.
see you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.